Can I just take
हाँ
this chair?
ये फिर हम शेयर कर देते हैं बाकी करके यही करूँगा।
So you're doing some broadcasting.
We are live from YouTube. Press conference live sir.
Okay. So live is Facebook से better रहता है
हाँ
YouTube पे?
YouTube पे है तो हम Facebook पे शेयर कर सकते हैं हर पेज
कैसे होती शिक्षा? Congratulations आपको भी.
So we'll start. Prabhakar, come. So, Prabhakar, come. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's see. इसको खाली छोड़ देते हैं. इसको थोड़ा साइड में. So we will start. We'll see this as a combination. So this was done actually in a little bit of a hurry, but it was done because we think it's very important. बहुत ये जो राजस्थान गवर्नमेंट ने कुछ चीजें दो कानून तो पास हुए हैं जो जिसकी काफी बात देश भर में बात हुई है, लेकिन उन कानूनों के अलावा पिछले 2 साल से एक कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव सोशल सिक्योरिटी का एक पूरा ढांचा बन रहा है, एंड दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू अंडरस्टैंड. और वो कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव सोशल सिक्योरिटी के ढांचे में इट्स द लॉज वी विल टॉक अबाउट. वी हैव Professor Prabhat Patnaik who will talk about a question that is being asked of us in lots of places is that is this affordable, is this doable? So from the point of view of civil society, the social sector, social movements, for us it's very important to lay it out that we think it's not only doable, it actually has to be done. It's important that it be done. And we have here Sheikh Salahuddin, who actually has been one of the premier people organizing gig workers. He is from Hyderabad, and the Telangana Gig Workers and Platform Workers Union is from, and IFAT, which is also a union, Indian Federation of App-based Transport Workers. So there is a historic law, the first one passed in the country certainly, and I think he can also tell us to our understanding, the first one passed in the world. So that is also extremely important and significant. We have Kavita and myself from Rajasthan, and we'll start off with Naveen. I don't know. Yeah.
So please put in the chair.
So we have Naveen Gautam who will all communities, and this is one particular law, the law on that deals with scheduled caste subplan and tribal subplan. Scheduled caste plan, special component plan, and tribal subplan, which means that how do you look at the budget in terms of them and their population and expenditure in terms of their population. Rajasthan became, I think, the fifth state to pass that law. That was passed last year. So we start this story last year. Prabhata, I'll request you after, I'll just give a background of Rajasthan, and then if you can speak, and then each one of us will speak. I will show you this very quickly. I won't go through the PowerPoint, but I'll show you this is from last year. There are 2 parts to this. One is, and that's why civil society feels it's worth coming to Delhi and talking about this, not just in a Rajasthan press conference, is the process where social movements were involved at every step. Pre-budget across the country that happens, you have 1 or 2 consultations, but we have had extensive post-budget consultations. So last year's post-budget consultation, I'll give you an example, and I will just mix up, sorry. So if you see that this was a discussion where the Chief Minister was present for 3 hours. It was a room where there were about 2,000 people present, and there were workshops all through the day. And this was a joint effort. This is last year, and this was repeated again this year. And it was the first time that we had a post-budget. So what we had demanded when it came in the budget, we said, how will it be implemented? So you can see what our demands were, that it should be considered a formal meeting with minutes. Every department should have follow-up meetings with civil society. Chief Minister's office should review and monitor progress. So it's not just in the making of policy, it's in the implementation of policy that should happen. Then I'm just going to, so MGNREJ 25 days were added last year, but it was made law this year. So the progression in how you move ahead, and it's not just 25 days extra, it's also, if you see here, that 200 days for specially marginalized groups such as primitive tribal groups and for disabilities, 200 days, which has been made part of the law this year. Urban Employment Guarantee was a scheme, it's been made into a law this year. So the progression is very clear in how it's happened. Homeless, there was a policy which has now been implemented. Kavita is involved in that. Education, what do you do post-COVID? No law, but various things that had to be done post-COVID. Child labor and elimination of child labor, again a policy that is now going to be implemented. Health, there was no law. The law has been passed. All of you know about the controversies around the law, but it has two parts. One is the law itself, which we were pushing for at that time, which is all public health institutions. And the other part of health is what is called Chiranjeevi Yojana, which is a 25 lakh hospitalization, which is near universal coverage. It's for 80% of the population. The state covers 28%. You can pay 850 rupees per household and be covered for a year, the whole household. Then there's this SCP TSP law, which we said we will also talk about. The Forest Rights Act and PESA, the implementation of that in terms of community forest rights. There's the building and other construction workers and its implementation. There was silicosis, the new policy, which is probably the best in the country, also being implemented. There was the National Food Security Act, which last year we were demanding food packets of oil and dal and things, which they've done this year. But we haven't yet fully got as much as we wanted in terms of numbers of people to be covered, which again Kavita might talk about. Women's empowerment, because there was a women's policy and what to do within that. There was nomadic, semi-nomadic. So DNT policy, which last year we had demanded, this year got made. So there was a promise last year to make it, and this year it got implemented. Folk artists, a completely new scheme of 100 days employment for all folk artists in the state, for them to do employment according to doing their folk art. Palanar, which is a fantastic scheme of the state government, which gives to children of widows and of orphans, orphan children, a huge range of things, and transparency and accountability, where we have failed to get what we wanted, which was an accountability law, but each time it's been promised in the budgets. There's a youth policy, which this year they are doing 50,000 Samvidhan Kendras and libraries to be run by youth as paid things. So it's also the constitutional values being brought in across the state. Prisons and prison reforms, which again, and road safety, agriculture development. There's a whole agriculture budget which is separate. There's an institute for governance. There's peace and harmony, which has to do with that. Libraries. Last year it was 8,870. It will be increased to 14,000. This year it's been increased to 50,000. And so just showed that, I didn't go into the details, because it gives you the idea of the wide expanse of what we mean by a complete social justice, social sector, and social security framework. And therefore, that's what defines the development framework. I'd request Prabhata particularly to focus on three things that have become law, because that's a commitment beyond the schemes that were there last year into law. One is that they will give 125 days of employment by law to either rural or urban. And the other is that they will give pensions, a minimum pension of 1,000 rupees with a 15% increment per year to 1 crore, nearly 1 crore pensioners, social security pensioners. A gig workers law, which doesn't actually require so much state resources. They put 200 crores for setting up of the board, but otherwise it will be funded from the aggregators themselves, which is a very important breakthrough in social security. And the right to health law, where they are covering both a mix of the the insurance scheme, as well as all state institutions, and health in all state institutions to be free. They have also this year, which was not there last year, as I said, this 1 kilo dal, 1 kilo oil, which we've all been asking about. There's 100 units of electricity free. There are 2,000 units of electricity free to farmers. There is 100 units to domestic. There is half fares for women in state transport buses. Karnataka has done full. And there are a range of other measures which are there this year which have been added on. The question, I think, for why Prabhada, we wanted him to come here, is that from our point of view, this is not just for Rajasthan, this is something we'd like nationally. From our point of view, there's a big contrast between what they say as revdis and what we see as rights. And the rights move from schemes to becoming laws. And laws also, it's a big struggle to implement, and therefore we need various other things in it. But if Prabhada could speak. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Many things are happening in Rajasthan which are very impressive. What I find particularly impressive is, as Nikhil said, these are not just schemes, but they actually have been enacted as legislation. For instance, urban employment guarantee, I know, and it was never really passed in the Legislative Assembly. Is being passed in the Legislative Assembly gives it a kind of statutory force. Then it actually becomes a right. And fundamentally, what I like about this whole spate of measures is the fact that it is moving towards a rights-based approach to a welfare state. And I think that is very important because, the opposition to that we know is quite widespread. The Prime Minister himself has called it freebies. But you see, to call it a freebie, to call these measures freebies, is something which is not only anti-poor, but it's also anti-democratic. Because if it is the case that, democracy is not just once in 5 years elections, but that people must have opinions about contemporary issues, they must have their views being aired, they must be able to discuss, and they must be able to make their views felt. In fact, Amartya Sen talks of democracy as government by discussion. Now, if it is government by discussion, then in the discussion, if people are going to participate, then they require a certain minimum amount of health, food, education to be able to be meaningful participants. Therefore, to fulfill your duties as citizens, you require a certain set of rights. And for this reason, for a very long time,